Thank you. It's an honor to be here. God has forgiven me for so much that I've done in the past, and His mercy is great. After healing from 3 abortions, I had 2 choices. I could keep my story to myself and just live an ordinary life like everybody else and go to my job and be okay with my family, or I could share my story publicly, which would mean a lot of sacrifice, losing family members, being judged, being criticized, and help men and women around the world heal their abortions. And I decided to lift up my cross and speak publicly. It's not easy speaking about your abortions because there's a lot of things in stake. You could lose friends and family members and be persecuted, but I decided to take up this cross and share this story so that at least one baby could be saved from abortion. I was born in northern part of California in Sonoma County. My parents are from Mexico. They're from the state of Jalisco. And when I was young in my home, everything was love. I felt very loved by my parents, by my brother, by my sister, and I felt like I was the happiest young girl living with my family. But we didn't know God. We didn't have a relationship with our Lord. We didn't pray as a family. We never had a Bible in our home. I didn't know how to pray the rosary. But because we were Catholic, my parents baptized me into the faith, and I did my first communion. But it was during my CCD classes where I got to know the love of God, the Father, and I knew of Jesus and the Virgin Mary. And that's when I started a relationship with the faith. When I was very young, I used to go into my backyard and write love letters to God the Father. I felt a strong connection to God the Father, and I wanted to send these letters up to heaven so He can read them. And I would fold these love notes, wrap them on the ribbon part of the balloon, and I'd send them off to heaven. And I remember just watching that balloon just go off into the sky, and I would talk to God on a daily basis. But after my first communion, that was the last time that I even talked about the Virgin Mary, about Jesus, or about God. My mom's friend, she had a new friend that she had met, and this friend started talking to my mom about the New Age movement and that it was something very modern, and she'd come over to our home every day after dinner, and she would show my mom how to do palm readings, how to do tarot card readings. And all of a sudden, my mom would travel long distances to buy crystals because they had angels trapped inside of these crystals. And these angels wanted to come home. And my mom would have all these types of crystals in our home with trapped angels, which I feel like they were demons. And my mom started doing palm readings, and my mom's friends were also psychics, and they'd come over to our home every weekend, and there would be tarot readings on our dinner table. And my sister and I, we were 8, 9, 10 years old, and every night we would sit in front of our television watching Shirley MacLaine, and we would be lining our chakras and awakening the serpent inside of us. And to me, this was truth, and this was what we believed in. And Jesus no longer was the king of our home. It was Satan, but we didn't know this. My sister and I started playing the Ouija board every single day after school. Pretty much, we converted our dinner table into a humongous Ouija board. We'd cut the alphabet letters into squares, and we'd place them on top of our dinner table. And we, with a small little dish, it was like a little salsa dip dish, we would turn it around, and we would use that to invoke our grandma or our aunt that had passed away, and what we would do every day is just talk to these people that were in heaven or in another life. And we got into some heavy duty stuff. We would go to big fairs. There were fairs where there were just witches that would read your past lives, and my mom would give us tickets, and we'd go to all these different booths and reincarnation, and we just got so deep into this. And the deeper we got, my parents' marriage was falling apart. And when I was very young, I was taught by my parents that having a successful career and being somebody in the U.S. was very important because my parents they came to the U.S. as immigrants. And my parents always said, you need to have a good career, you need to make money, you need to have good credit because that makes you worthy in the U.S. My father would always say, when you find a husband that has a good job, a good career, because that's very important. Those were the values that I was taught. That was dignity. That was human dignity. My mom was very, very vain also. My mom would tell me, I'm gonna cut my wrist when I'm 40 years old because I don't want to live past 40. I fear the day that I have wrinkles on my face, and beauty was very, very important to my mom. All the values I had in my heart were very worldly, was looking good, being popular, having a lot of friends. The material things were very, very important to me. Traveling the world and having all these goals were important. I didn't know God. I didn't know that my purity was a treasure. I didn't know that I had to find a man who respected me, that put me on a pedestal, that looked out for my soul. I didn't know these things. When I was 12 years old, in my school, they announced that Planned Parenthood were going to come and educate us on sexuality. We're going to have a course on sexuality, and my mom had to sign the permission slip. And I remember saying, Mom, would you let me go to this class? It's on sexuality. And she said, of course, this is awesome that these educators are going to come and teach you guys. And you know, Patricia, the only thing I'm going to tell you as your mother is be responsible, be smart, use a condom the day you decide to have sex. My mom couldn't tell me any more advice because her parents never talked to her about sexuality. My dad's parents never talked to him about sexuality. So how are my parents going to teach me something they do not know? I remember when I got to school, on my desk, there was a banana and a condom. The educators said, well, kids, there's a lot of sexually transmitted diseases in the U.S., there's a lot of unwanted pregnancies, and a lot of kids, they don't know how to apply a condom. So we're going to teach you guys how to apply a condom properly, and we're going to teach you guys how to practice safe sex. And I remember when I was 12, we were all giggling, we were all laughing. I've never even thought of sexuality. I've never even thought of having sex. And what was happening in this course is they were opening our minds. And they were giving us inspirations to think about it, to be curious about having sex. That's what they were doing. It was all a setup. And I remember they said, well, we're going to teach you gals how to use the birth control pill, and we're going to talk about all these ways that you guys can protect yourself against pregnancy, like if it were some type of disease. And I remember learning about pornography. Pornography, that doesn't hurt anybody. You're just looking. You're just using your eyes. And you know what? We actually encourage you guys to start masturbating because we prefer that you guys start masturbating as young children than you guys starting a sexual relation with different partners. This way, you guys can protect yourself from transmitted disease, but you can still relieve like your desires, the pleasure. You know, masturbation is actually good for you. It's good for your emotions. It's good to release stress and anxiety, and we actually recommend it. And I remember all these things that they were telling us. And when I left that class, I thought, okay, safe sex. It seems so easy, like too good to be true. So the day I meet the love of my life and I decide to have sex, safe sex is the answer. That's what they kind of made it look like. But like I said, it was all a setup. It was all a lie because abortion is $1 million industry, and they need abortions. So at home, everything was going worse with my parents, and one day my mom, she went into the living room with her 2 luggage and said, I'm leaving. I'm moving to Mexico. I can't stand this marriage anymore, and I'm going to leave. And she left. And I was so angry at her. I hated my mom. I thought, wait, my mom, the loving mom, my best friend, how can she leave her children and her family? And I hated her. And I became very rebellious. I was so upset about the divorce, I started pulling my hair out. I didn't know how to deal with the emotional distress, so I started pulling my hair out, and it basically became an addiction that's called trichotillomania, or it's a disease, an emotional disease. And I would pull my hair out, and I was very rebellious, and I would go out every weekend. I mean, I was like 15, 16 years old, and I just partied with my friends. I would drink, and the only thing I cared about in life was being popular, looking good, having the best clothes, and just being rich when I got older. That's what motivated me for my future. I met my first boyfriend when I was 19 years old. I was still a virgin. And I remember my friends, they were laughing at me. They were like bullying me. They said, Patricia, you're 19 years old. You're still a virgin. You're the only virgin left out of our little clique. Come on. You love your boyfriend. You've been dating him for 6 months. He's 25 years old. He's already had sex with other women. And if you don't have sex with him, he's going to leave you. You're 19, he's 25. Come on. If you really love him, you would give yourself to him. And I thought, this is what I thought, that when you really love somebody, you give everything. You give your body, you give your heart, you give everything. That's what I thought true love was. And that's what many young girls think that love is. They think, I want my boyfriend to know that I love him. And they literally, they give their body. They give themselves up because they want their boyfriend to know that they love them. And that's what I thought love was. I didn't know what true love meant. So we started having safe sex. We started off using the condom. And 6 months into it, I started feeling nauseous. I started feeling really sick. And I thought, no, there's no way I can be pregnant. There's no way. But when I took that pregnancy test, positive. And when I saw positive, the first thing that entered my heart was fear. And I know, speaking to thousands of women around the world, the root of all abortion is fear. And I thought, oh my goodness, my dreams, my goals, my career, this is a disaster. This is not success. Pregnant at 19 years old, and I'm going to be stuck at home. This is not success. This is not what I want for myself. And I was so terrified about my dad kicking me out of the house and not supporting me. And I called my boyfriend and I said, I'm pregnant. And he was so happy. He said, I'm so happy. Do not worry. I will protect you. I will take care of you. You're under my wing. To hear the words of a man say, I will protect you. You're okay. You're not alone. That gives women so much courage to say yes to life. Unfortunately, many abortions in the U.S. and around the world is because today men are scared to be fathers. It's not just women who are scared to be mothers, but I feel that today there are more men who are terrified of being responsible and being a father than women are. And he supported me, and that gave me the strength to say, you know what, I will be okay. He went with me to my first appointment with our gynecologist, and I remember I had my first ultrasound. When I looked at the screen, I saw the head, I saw the arms, and I saw life was forming. I saw life was forming. And I felt so happy when I left that doctor's appointment. I remember I would grab my womb and I would sing lullaby songs, and I felt like I was protecting something that was growing inside of me. But the same friends that said, oh, Patricia, come on, you're a virgin. Come on, that's so old school. Those same friends, I noticed that they weren't happy with my pregnancy. They never said, hey, you know what, you messed up, but we are here, we're your friends, we're going to support you. They actually came over to my home one evening. I was 4 months pregnant. My stomach was actually starting to show, and they were crying, and they said, what are you doing? This is the worst mistake of your life. You are not ready to be a mom. You have the best grades in school. You have all these goals. You want to travel. Are you crazy? And really, I'm going to say something. My friends aren't evil. It was ignorance. They thought they were giving me the best advice. And I felt that they really cared for me. We were just a group of ignorant girls. And I said, no, they're right. What am I thinking? I do want to travel. I'm not even married yet. I don't want my dad to get mad at me. He doesn't know. I want to, it's not the time yet. But I'm not going to tell my boyfriend the truth because he's so excited to be a father. And my boyfriend's Mexican. And I really seriously thought that Latino people did not have abortions. I thought Latino people were very, very pro-family. And I thought, he's not going to accept an abortion. But so what I'm going to do to solve this problem, as soon as I said to solve this problem, it was not something growing inside of me. I disconnected. It was a problem. To solve this problem, I'm just going to go have an abortion, and then I'll just call him and tell him I had a miscarriage. And then I can continue studying. I can continue with my goals, and I will be the same person I was before I was pregnant. I thought it was that easy. Again, fear entered my heart. I made my appointment to have an abortion at 9 o'clock in the morning. I wanted to be the first one in and the first one out, and I wanted to forget that abortion and never think about it again. And I remember when I stepped out of my car in the parking lot, there was this big cloud of shame that just came over my body. I remember even my body hovering like this. Women feel so shameful. And I remember when I closed the door, the door to my car, and I saw my reflection on that window, I looked at myself and I thought, I never thought I would get pregnant, but I never thought I'd be walking into an abortion clinic. And that's the problem. A lot of you think, oh, that's not going to happen to me. I'm not going to get pregnant. That happens to Jennifer that lives over 3 blocks over there. That doesn't happen to me. That's not going to happen to me. And a lot of parents think, oh, that won't happen to my daughter. We're a good family. We've taught her good values. That's not going to happen to my daughter. We think it's not going to happen to us or it's not going to happen to our children, and it does. And I walked into that clinic, and I thought, I'm not going to look at anybody in the eyes because I do not want to see somebody I know. I just want to forget about this. There's so much shame. And I walked in to the lobby, and I was looking down at the floor, but I couldn't help but notice that there were sneakers all inside of that lobby. There was Converse, Keds, and I look up and there was about 30 young girls ready to have their abortion that day. They were about 13, 14, 15 years old. And I looked into their faces, and a lot of these girls were terrified. They were shaking. And I remember some of them were by themselves, and some of them were with their 14-year-old boyfriends, little kids. And I go up to the reception, I go, what's going on? Why are there kids here having abortions? I'm 19 years old, I'm an adult. And they said, okay, well, the state of California, when you're 13 years old, a 13-year-old can actually have an abortion without her parents' consent. Now, mind you, here in California, just not that long ago, a couple of months ago, I had a headache. And I went to go buy some Tylenol, and I got carded for buying Tylenol because you have to have 21 years of age now in the state of California to buy NyQuil, buy Tylenol. But you can go have an abortion at 13 years of age. It's just crazy. And I remember her saying, do you want to have an abortion here at the clinic, or do you want to have an abortion in the comfort of your own home? I'm like, the comfort of my own home? What do you mean? Oh, there's just this pill that you take, and in 48 hours, you will have an abortion just, comfortably laying in your bed, and you'll be comfortable. You'll be in your bathroom. I'm like, I don't want to have an abortion in my bathroom. I'm sorry. I want to have it here, and I want to walk away from this clinic. I don't want to think about this again. And when they put me inside of the operating room, I was so nervous because they never give you pre-instructions. They don't tell you. They just tell you to come in. They don't give you any type of instructions. So I went inside the operation room, and I was sitting there, and I was, at that time, I was a receptionist. I worked with a group of doctors. So in my field, in the medical field, I was always taught to be honest with the patient. Patient care is the most important, and they taught us very good morale in my work. So this doctor comes in, and it was this woman. She was beautiful. She said, are you nervous, Patricia? Are you shaking? No, don't be nervous. This is only going to take 5 minutes. Look, I've had an abortion. I performed 2 abortions on my daughter last year. My daughter's okay. I'm okay. You're going to be just fine. This is your body. This is the best choice for you. You're not doing anything wrong. And I confided in her because she's a doctor. I worked with 5 other doctors, and I really thought she was telling me the truth. The nurse walks in with the ultrasound machine, and she says, okay, lay down. We're going to do one more ultrasound before your abortion. We just want to see how many months you are into your pregnancy. And I remember when they put the handle on top of my womb, I wanted to see the screen because I thought, okay, wait, I saw my ultrasound when I was 2 months. Now I'm 4. So I just want to see if it's not a baby, if it's not developed. So I asked her, well, can I see the screen? And she said, what do you want to see the screen for? I said, because I just want to see if it's a baby. She said, of course it's not a baby. You don't need to look at the screen. It's a sack of tissue. Don't worry. Just lay down. This is only going to take 5 minutes. In my head, I thought, okay, 5 minutes. This abortion's not going to traumatize me. The whole vacuum thing is not going to traumatize me. I'm going to close my eyes. I'm not going to look at any of the instruments, and I'm going to survive 5 minutes. It's going to go by fast. But I had to literally emotionally block myself to get through it because I was terrified. I didn't know what was going to happen to me. During those 5 minutes, I don't remember too much, but what I do remember is that when I left that operating room, I felt this big emptiness in my womb, like this big hole, like something was just sucked out of me. And I remember the doctor saying, okay, well, the only thing you're going to feel after this abortion is you're going to have some cramping and light bleeding. And here, you can start your work tomorrow. Just take these pills for the cramping or any type of pain. Like, it was a no biggie. But they never, ever talked to me about post-abortion syndrome. I had no idea that I was going to live a living hell inside of my mind and my emotions and physical damage as well. When I left, I thought, okay, this problem is solved. I could be the same person, but I just had to call my boyfriend now and tell him the news. I didn't cry. I didn't shed one tear. I didn't feel anything. I was like this numb person, and I felt literally my heart was like this, it turned into this rock. And I called my boyfriend, and I said, guess what? I didn't feel well this morning. I went to the gynecologist. I had a miscarriage. I said, it's so cold. And then I heard him cry. And he was crying, and he was so affected by the loss. And then all of a sudden, guiltiness started coming into my heart. I thought, oh my, he's shedding tears for a loss when I know I've had an abortion. And I thought, you know what, don't cry. It was just a sac of tissue. It was nothing. It was just a pregnancy. It wasn't a baby. It was nothing. So don't cry. But what started happening is that we both started suffering post-abortion syndrome. I started feeling anxious. I started feeling anger all of a sudden. I just lashed out at him or my dad or my brothers and sisters. I started feeling sad at times. And then I'd look in the mirror, and my self-esteem was dropping. I felt really disgusted to look at myself. And I thought, what's going on with me? And he would say, what's wrong with you? You scream at everything. You cry at everything. Your emotions are just like a roller coaster. And then he started having nightmares. And he'd say, I'm having these horrible nightmares almost every night. I'm like, what are you dreaming? He said, a little girl saying, Daddy, Daddy, I'm dreaming of a little girl. And I would feel bad. And I'd be like, no, why? It was just a sack of tissue. It was nothing. And I'd get angry when he'd tell me that. Unfortunately, he didn't know that he had an abortion. He didn't know that he had an abortion. And it takes two to tango. It takes two for pregnancies. It takes man and woman for a baby to form. When a woman has an abortion, so did the man. And we forget that. We always focus, the women who abort. What about the men? What about the men that take the women to have an abortion? They have abortions too, and they suffer post-abortion syndrome. And I started taking the birth control pill because I thought, wait, the condom kind of didn't work. I don't want to go through that again. So I started practicing safe sex again with the birth control pill, taking my pill every single day at the same time. Planned Parenthood, right before I left, after my abortion, they gave me a humongous bag of birth control pills. It was free, and free condoms, and that's what I started taking. And I started feeling sick with the birth control pills, even more nauseous. So you can imagine, I had post-abortion syndrome, and I was also suffering headaches, nausea. I didn't feel good with the birth control pill. The birth control pill shouldn't be a medicine. It's a drug. It is very dangerous and hazardous for a woman to take. It's an atomic bomb. So I had the effects of the birth control pill and the post-abortion syndrome on top of that. So it was just a disaster. 6 months after my first abortion, I started feeling nauseous again. I started feeling tired and sleepy. I thought, no, there's no way I'm pregnant. I'm taking my pill every day at the same time. But I was inside of this trap that they created for me when I was 12 years old. And I took the pregnancy test, positive. I thought, oh my gosh, how am I pregnant? I'm not stupid. I'm responsible. People are going to think I'm not going to tell my friends. I'm not going to tell where am I going to tell my boyfriend? He's just going to want to have a baby. I don't want to go through this. I don't want this. And I was already feeling miserable. There was no way I was going to be a mom feeling already miserable and anxious and irritable. So I thought, okay, I'm just going to have an abortion. It's just a sack of tissue. I'm literally 1 month. It's just a clump of cells. But I can't go to the same clinic because that's embarrassing. They're going to think that I'm stupid, that I'm irresponsible. I'm going to go to Planned Parenthood. They're basically my heroes. They've always given me free condoms, and they're the best. And they look out for the youth, and they went to my school. And I went to Planned Parenthood. And what I remember from the second abortion, during the abortion, I was listening to the vacuum sound, and I blocked myself again. I didn't see the instruments. I didn't want to see anything, and I closed my eyes, and I was stiff as a board. I heard the doctor applauding me. And I opened my eyes. I was shocked. And she said, oh, my goodness, Patricia, this is amazing. I want to congratulate you. You're not even crying. Most of the women cry during an abortion. You haven't even fainted. You're not even moving your feet. You're not even kicking me. You're making my job so easy. You're the best patient I've ever had during an abortion here at Planned Parenthood. And I want to congratulate you because you're so courageous and this is the best choice for you. And since I was such a people pleaser, I wanted people to applaud me, the world, I felt courageous. I mean, that sounds sick, but I felt like, wow, I'm such a good patient. And I went into this back room. It's the recovery room. And they put these slippers on me and this robe. And I kind of felt like I was in a spa. The nurse came and she gave me a little massage. And she gave me some cookies and some tea. She said, I just want to congratulate you. Everybody here in the office is talking about how great you were during your abortion. They gave me another bag of condoms, another big bag of birth control pills, and I was so grateful for their services and grateful they're giving me all this stuff for free. And I left, and the only thing they said, again, was you'll have some cramping, and tomorrow you will be normal again at your job. Normal? No. It was worse. I started having suicidal thoughts. I felt like life wasn't worth living. I was so irritable. I thought, oh my gosh, I can't live. I couldn't breathe at times. I started having nightmares about babies. I would hear babies cry in public and I'd go nuts. I couldn't see babies in public walk because I felt so guilty. My boyfriend would come near me and I would get so nauseous and grossed out by him. I'm like, oh, I don't even know if I love him anymore. And that's why it's so dangerous when there's abortions within a marriage because it separates the marriage. The marriage doesn't last. And I started feeling irritable around him. And he's like, what's wrong with you? You're not the same person. You're turning into this monster. And I didn't know what was going on. I really thought it was because my family was split. I kind of blamed it on that. I didn't know I was suffering severely post-abortion syndrome. And so was he. But I thought to myself, I'm not going to leave him because then who's going to love me? My dad's not paying attention to me. He's still hurting over my mom's abortion. He's kind of like this numb person that's just a zombie walking around. Who's going to love me? So I stayed with my boyfriend, and since he's my boyfriend, well, the normal thing that boyfriend and girlfriend do is to have sex. That's totally normal. And 6 months after the second abortion, I felt nauseous again and sick, and I was pregnant for the third time. And there's a statistic, 55% of women who have one abortion, they have multiple. It's a trap. This whole safe sex thing, it's a trap because women have multiple abortions from it. And I was furious. I'm like, wait, 3 pregnancies in 1 year and a half? What's going on? I'm doing everything that they taught me in school when I was in the 6th grade, when I was 12 years old. I'm doing everything that Planned Parenthood and the clinics are telling me to do. I'm taking my pill what's going on? But this time, I didn't want to go by myself. I didn't want to feel guilty. I didn't want to be the witch of the story. I said, I'm going to tell my boyfriend, but I'm going to make him go with me to the abortion clinic because I want him to feel crummy like I feel crummy. So I'm just going to tell him that I'm going to have an abortion, whether he likes it or not, and that's it. And if he wants to come, well, I encourage him to come. So I called him, and I told him I was pregnant, and he was so happy. And I said, you know what? No. We're not married. I don't want to have any kids right now. It's not the time. And I'm gonna go have an abortion. And he stayed quiet. And then he said, but I don't want to have an abortion. I want to be a father. But when he said that, I was so angry, and I thought, you have no right over my body. It's my body. I said, and you're so selfish. You know why? Because I'm gonna lose my career, my goals, my dreams. I am going to be the one that won't be able to study. My dad's going to kick me out of the house. You're not going to lose anything. You are so selfish, and you'll only think about yourself. Well, now I am so sad because I took away the right for him to be a father. It takes 2 to tango, like I said. It's so sad that we need a man to create a baby, but in the moment we decide to have an abortion, we don't need the man anymore. Today, the unborn don't have a voice, but men don't have voice. And I always say this around the world, especially to the politicians. I said, men who vote for abortion, how unfortunate. Because you're voting against the rights of men to be fathers. You're voting for men to have silence and have no voice. It's so sad. I have friends of mine who are men, and they've told me, Patricia, I went to the abortion clinic. I tried to save the life of my child. I stood in front of the door and I couldn't do anything to save the life of my child because I have no legal right in this country. And that's what happens. And that's what I did to my boyfriend. During the abortion, he went because he was scared I'd leave him. He loved me so much. I closed my eyes. I said, I'm going to block myself out again. And when he heard the vacuum sound, I felt him squeeze my hand so hard. And I opened my eyes because I wanted to see his reaction. And when I looked at his face, his lip was jumping. It was trembling of fear. And I looked at his eyes, and they were full of tears. Well, that abortion was the longest 5 minutes of my life because during those 5 minutes, the only thing I could feel were his tears bathe my face. And every teardrop of his that would come down my cheek and down my neck, it was guiltiness and guiltiness and guiltiness. And then I came to realize he's thinking it's the first abortion, when in reality, it's the third abortion in 1 year and a half. How did this come to be? How do I have 3 abortions in 1 year and a half? And my heart was stone. I had no emotions. After that abortion, I knew I was going to leave him. I was so suicidal. I just wanted to die. I didn't want to live, and I couldn't handle him. And he was kind of suicidalish, and he was depressed. It was so hard to be together. So I left him, and I thought to myself, okay, what I need to do is I just need to move out of my town, and I need to move. I need to start a new life. I just need new friends and new everything. So I left my father's home, and I had my own apartment in Sacramento, California. I've always worked in the medical field, so I was looking for a job. And in the newspaper, because back then you found a job with the newspaper, and I saw an ad for Planned Parenthood. They urgently needed a bilingual person, they just said person, to work with them. And I thought, oh, yeah, my heroes. Oh, my gosh, Planned Parenthood. I want to give back to them. I want to give back to women and youth, and they're great. I can be successful in Planned Parenthood, and I can move up. And, of course, I want to go work for them. During my interview, the manager said, okay, do you have a problem with abortion? This woman, I've never since then met a cold-hearted, bitter woman like this woman. I said, no, I don't have a problem with abortion. I've actually had 3 myself. I'm pro-abortion. I'm pro-choice. Oh, this is amazing. This is going to help us so much in this office. Here in this clinic, we do 50 abortions a week. We do 25 on Wednesdays and 25 on Fridays. 90% of the women are Hispanic women who don't speak any English at all. And we've never had a Spanish-speaking person. All right, I want to pause there. Today, I think about, wait a minute. If they perform that many abortions on non-speaking English women, can you imagine how horrific it was for a woman that doesn't speak the language going into a clinic and is about to have an abortion, signing a consent form in English, and she has no idea what this consent form says. And what the consent form says is, you can die during this abortion and your family cannot sue us. If this woman had complications after her abortion, there is no way that she can ask the doctor or receive any type of instructions because she doesn't know the language. And because of the shame of having an abortion, there's no way this woman's going to tell anybody she had an abortion. Do you know how dangerous that is, now that I think about it? So they hired me at Planned Parenthood not as a receptionist. They hired me as a nurse with no credentials. I'd never studied to be a nurse. I never went to nursing school. And they hired me as a nurse. And I started on a Monday. And they were paying me double the amount of money that I was making back in Sonoma County in Napa, which was pretty good money. When I started on Monday, they took me into the office, and the manager said, okay, so today you're going to counsel 50 women for their abortions. The most important thing in this clinic is that they never see the ultrasound screen. If the woman cries, if she's demanding to see the screen, there's only one person in this whole office that can see the screen, and it's one of the nurses. The screen must face the nurse. In this clinic, you will not use the word baby. he, she, mother, father, or even fetus. Because if you use those words, that gives human dignity. You're going to have to say it's a clump of cells or a sack of tissue. That's the only thing you could use. No human dignity that refers to what they have inside of their womb. And I was kind of confused a little bit. I didn't understand because working in the medical field, I was always taught to tell the truth, to be honest, and that patient care is the most important care. Patients are before us that are the employees. So I was a little confused. Now, Patricia, you will not bring a photograph of your nephews, nieces, cousins, or your family in this office, because if a woman walks into the clinic and sees a photograph of a family, she can get traumatized and walk out, and she won't have her abortion. If a woman does not come to her abortion appointment, you can lose your job. They threatened me with my job. Now, Patricia, you will never, ever have any type of friendship with a patient. You can't be nice to them. You can't be helpful because most of the women come in here crying. And if you look at their tears, you're going to obviously have to say, why are you crying? You don't have to have an abortion. There's other options. There's adoption. There's something. No, you will not look at their tears, and you will not give them any other option but abortion. Is that clear? I was seriously confused. And that day, I counseled 50 women, most of them in Spanish, and I was preparing them for their abortion. And they all, 50 women, would say the same thing. It was like a broken record playing over and over. But my baby's going to feel, right? They're going to feel it. And I would say, of course not. A baby, it's not a baby. It's a sack of tissue. A sack of tissue won't feel an abortion. It's a nothing. It won't feel anything. And I would tell these girls, you're 13 years old. You're going to suffer, and you're going to bring a child into this world to suffer. And I thought I was helping these young girls. I thought I was really doing an act of charity. Wednesday comes along, and Wednesday was a day that we performed all the abortions. Now, mind you, this part is it's very powerful to hear, and it's very hurtful to hear. It's very raw. I've had a lot of people walk out of my talks during this part, but this is the part that is the most important. This is why we fight for life. Now, if we have the courage to hear the life of the saints that were martyrs, well, let's have the courage to hear the life of these saints that are today's martyrs of the church. This is so important, and this is why we do what we do. This is why we fight against contraceptives. This is why we fight against abortion, because of what they suffer. I go into the office, and the manager says, you will never tell a soul what you see behind these doors. And she said, you will be assisting the doctor today during all the women's abortions. You will never tell a woman that after her abortion, we throw their babies away in the garbage. And you will never tell the fathers in the waiting room that after each abortion, we throw their babies away in the garbage. Do you understand? And I felt something pierce my heart. I was so frightened to ask anything. And I didn't say anything. I stayed numb. And she said, we have an abortionist that comes from outside of the clinic. He's not from this clinic. And do you know why? I said, no. They said, because if a woman dies during an abortion, when we've had women die, the woman can't sue the clinic because the doctor's not from here. So he just basically bounces around different clinics around the U.S. and performs abortions. Now, the abortions can only last 5 minutes because time is money. So he's going to be jumping into one room, doing an abortion, and then jump into the next, and he's going to be jumping back and forth between 2 rooms. Do you understand that you cannot last more than 5 minutes assisting the doctor? Time is money, and you can get fired. And they kept threatening me with my job. And at this point, I didn't understand what was going on. I still thought I was doing the right thing. The first young girl walked in. She was 15 years old, and she was 3 months pregnant. And she started to faint in my arms, and I thought, oh, gosh, this girl's so exaggerated. She's, like, sweating and fainting. She's doing this drama. She's going to abort a sack of tissue. Why is she acting like this? She's not brave. I was brave. I didn't cry. I didn't act like that. I didn't faint. And I put her on top of the table, the exam table, and I remember the doctor walking in. It was a tall, strong doctor. He didn't say hello to me. He didn't say hello to her. He said, we're starting the abortion now. We have 5 minutes. That's what he said. And he said, stand behind me. And I remember that he uncovered the tray table, basically the Mayo stand with all the instruments. And when I looked at each instrument, I mean, it looked vicious. It looked scary. I mean, it was like scissors and clamps and little knives. And then he takes out this needle and he says, see, Patricia, we got to inject her 7 times. This is the anesthesia. We got to inject her 7 times inside of the womb. This is why the needle's so long. It was like literally this big. So she doesn't feel anything. And I remember, because I'd blocked myself out during my 3 abortions, I was terrified when I saw this. I thought, oh my gosh, this doesn't look good. And all of a sudden, he turns on the vacuum. This vacuum is 28 times stronger than a regular vacuum that you clean your home with. It's very powerful. And on the tip of this, of the machine, it's called cannula. It's literally like this little blade on the tip. And he says, stand behind me, we're going to start the abortion. When I stand behind the doctor, it was the most violent thing I have ever seen in my life. He puts this cannula inside of her cervix, and he has to assure himself that he takes everything out, because if something's left behind, this girl can die from an infection. So he has to move this little blade around her womb. And at this point, when she's kicking in the air and he's trying to dodge her legs from kicking, and he's got this thing in his hand going like this, I thought to myself, this looks like a violent act of rape. That's why we can never justify abortion with rape. Abortion's so traumatizing that the girl will never heal from the rape experience from an abortion. She just comes out worse. And I remember thinking, he can't see inside of her womb. How does he know he's not damaging her ovaries? How does he know that he has everything? And I always give this example during my talks. Abortion is a blind man's surgery. It's as if I'm the doctor and I say, hi, good morning, I'm Patricia Sandoval. I will be performing your heart surgery today. But before I start, let me just grab my little sharp blade and let me just turn the light off and let me just put, just cover my eyes, and then I'll start doing surgery on you. That's what abortion is. That's what women sign, the consent form. These 13-year-old girls don't know what they're signing. It's so dangerous. A lot of women, I just came recently from Argentina. Things are very intense there because I think they're trying to vote on abortion this next coming month. And I had all types of feminists come to all my talks. And what they would argue is, legalize abortion, it's safe abortion. Safe abortion to legalize it. No. There's no such thing as safe abortion. Okay? Just like safe sex, there's no same thing. If a woman has an abortion in a back alley, or she has an abortion in a castle, it's the same thing. The doctor can't see inside of the womb. She can die either inside of a castle or on the streets in the back alley. It doesn't matter. There's no such thing as safe abortion. And then the doctor looks at the clock and he says, okay, Patricia, it's 5 minutes. I think I'm done. And I thought to myself, think? Is this a guessing game? Think? And then he looks at the amount of blood that was taken out of her womb. It was inside of this cylinder, like this glass cylinder. He's like, okay, this is a good amount of blood. I think we're good. Turns off the machine, opens the cylinder, and everything just falls into this bag. And he says, grab the bag, and there's a nurse that's waiting for you by the door. Go follow her. The nurse was 19 years old, and she was hired just like me, no credentials. Fake nurse training me. Grab this bag, follow this nurse, and I go into this little room, and she said, close the door, hurry, close the door. I said, why? She said, because if that girl gets up and goes to the restroom that's right there and sees what we're about to see, then she can sue us. We're going to change this little room to somewhere else because the bathroom's right there. And I close the door, and in front of me, there's this Petri dish. It was like this big glass. And she says, dump the contents that are inside of the bag inside of that Petri dish. And I remember when I grabbed the bag and I just dumped everything in the Petri dish, the first thing I said, okay, I'm going to look for the sack of tissue, because I told this girl during her consultation 2 days ago it was nothing. The smell of the contents were so powerful. It smelled like death that I wanted to faint. And when I look at this young girl that's training me, I thought, okay, she has to want to vomit like I do. When I look at her face, it was a robot. There was no emotion. It was a zombie. And when I started looking at all these young girls working inside of Planned Parenthood, they look like zombies and robots because they have to act like that to survive the trauma of abortion. We judge those workers, but do you know that Planned Parenthood doesn't go just after young girls for abortions? They hire young girls and pay them a good amount of money because the youth are motivated by money to stay at such a place and survive those traumas. We have to pray for all those young, traumatized girls that are working there to have a conversion and to get out. Just as we have to pray for the conversion of abortionists. Do not forget the abortionists. They're human beings. They're children of God, and we have to pray for their conversion. These people are traumatized in there. It's horrific. She takes out these forceps. They look like tweezers. And she starts digging inside of this Petri dish. And all of a sudden, she lifts up an arm with a little hand, and the fingers were extended like this. And she said, this is part number 1. We need 5 parts of the baby to verify that the abortion was successful. And I know I didn't know God back then, but I know God was with me because it was as if time stopped and that hand was held up to the light for so long, and I can contemplate every detail. And the first thing I saw were the fingerprints. And I said, oh my goodness, fingerprints. Fingerprints identify us as authentic human individuals. There's nobody else like us in the world. And then she turns the little hand around, and this baby already had fingernails, and she puts it on the counter. And then she went back into the Petri dish, and she lifted up the leg with the foot. And I could see that the baby had footprints. He had toenails. But what really struck me was that on his skin, I could see like little light hairs that were already forming on his leg or her leg. And she puts it on the counter. She found the other arm, the other leg. But what really broke my heart is when she lifted up the head. This baby already had hair. His eyebrow was forming. I saw lashes. I saw 2 eyelashes on one eye. But when the mouth was open, as if this mouth was screaming for its life, and nobody can hear his voice, this poor, defenseless being fought for his life, and there was nobody there to defend it or to hear him because he had no voice. And when she puzzled this human baby together, that's when I said, I was lied to. They lied to me. They deceived me. I didn't abort 3 sack of tissues. I aborted 3 human beings that were my own children in my own body. I was so terrified, I couldn't talk. And I was a coward, and I didn't say anything, and I kept going. And the atmosphere in Planned Parenthood during abortion days was a living hell on earth. It is a factory of people just being killed. A young girl walks in. She has an abortion. She comes out screaming, fainting. I would look for the arms, legs, heads, garbage, and then she'd pay her money. And then another girl walk in. She's screaming. She's fainting. There's blood everywhere. Head, feet, everything in the garbage, and then the money. And it was just this factory all day of just killing little human babies. At the end of the day, in this garbage can, there's 25 babies in pieces. And I'd ask her, I said, what do I do with I said, the bag. I didn't want to say garbage. And she said, the garbage? Well, grab that garbage, and you could store it in that refrigerator, that freezer that we have over there. Every month, Biohazard comes in, and they pick up the babies or the dead babies, and they dump them in the dumpsters. She said, we can't it's illegal to throw blood away in the garbage cans. Can you imagine? And she started laughing. She said, can you imagine if we throw this garbage away in the garbage bins outside of the clinic, all the women that would just lift up the garbage bin and just see a bunch of dead babies? Oh, that would be horrific. And they would laugh. And they would ask me, what are you going to have for lunch later? What did you do this weekend? And I thought, are these people nuts? Do they not feel anything? What's wrong with them? And it was so horrific for me to open this freezer up and to see blocks of ice with aborted babies frozen. You would just see pieces of arms. You would see their mouths screaming, just frozen. And this freezer is just full of blocks of ice of dead babies. And I was there when Biohazard would come, and he would take these blocks of ice, and I said, what are you going to do with them? And he said, we're just going to dump them. It's just so horrible. I was only there for 1 month. I couldn't stand it. I was scared to leave my job because I had to pay my apartment. It was the first time I lived by myself. The pay was so good. It was double. But it was the last day when I arrived at Planned Parenthood. I walk in, and it's the first time I saw my manager so happy and a smile on her face. She grabbed me by the arm, and she said, this abortion's going to cost her $3,000. And when I looked over at this young girl, I was supposed to assist her during her abortion. Her stomach was huge. She was 6 months pregnant with twins. And I thought, there's no way I can look for two siblings, their body part. I can't do this. And I was so terrified, I ran out of Planned Parenthood. But I was already suffering post-abortion syndrome from my abortions. Now, this trauma was something bigger than just having 3 abortions. I was a part of women killing their children, and I was deceived as a worker too. They made me lie, they tricked me. I was so depressed and felt like a murderer. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know God. So what did I do? I started using drugs. I started using cocaine. I had a boyfriend because my self-esteem was just very low, that was a drug addict. And I thought to myself, there's no way I'll get addicted. I'm not going to be one of those addicts on the streets. I'm just going to use it for fun. Because sometimes the youth, we think that we're like invisible or made out of steel, that nothing's going to happen to us. But I started using cocaine, and it did help me ease the pain. But when the drug wore off, I needed more because I felt worse. And I was so addicted that my nose would bleed. I couldn't pass the drug up my nose anymore. And I was frustrated, and my boyfriend said, why don't you start smoking crack, methamphetamine? You know, you just smoke it out of a pipe, and you're not going to damage your nose any further. So I started smoking methamphetamine, and I loved it because it gave me a bigger numbness in my heart. I was so addicted to methamphetamine that obviously I couldn't work, I couldn't study, I couldn't function anymore as a human being. And I lost everything. I lost my apartment, I lost my job, I lost everything. And I ended up as a homeless methamphetamine drug addict for 3 years on the streets. I couldn't go to my father because he always taught me that if you want to be somebody important and have worth in the United States, you had to have a good job. You had to be somebody. And I was just a piece of trash at this point. I was so thin because I did so much drugs. I was always high. I was so thin that my body started to literally hover over, and my bones would stick out of my back. I was just all bones. And from so much anxiety, because my life was just a nightmare, I pulled all my hair out from trichotillomania. I had no hair. I had bones sticking out, and I didn't sleep 4 or 5 days, and my eyes just looked zombied out. And I remember one day, I looked at myself in the mirror, and I looked into my eyes, and the only thing I could see was death. I was a dead woman walking. And I looked at myself, and I asked myself, what happened to you? What happened to that young girl that was loved at home, that felt like a princess, that wanted to conquer the world, that wanted to have the best job and career, that had dreams and goals? What happened to you? How did you end up here? And I had no hope for my life. I really felt like trash. And one day, I fought with my boyfriend, the drug addict, and he left me sitting on the side of the curb. And he went into a car, and he left me, and I thought he'd come back for me. I thought he loved me. And time just started to roll by, and he never, ever came back for me. And I started to cry. I started to cry because I was just tired of life. I was tired of the way I was living and feeling so hopeless. And I started crying like a little girl. And I thought to myself, what is going to become of me? What's going to happen with my life? And as I was crying, I remembered when I was a little girl, and I used to write love notes to God the Father, and I used to fold them and wrap them on the string and send them off to heaven through a balloon. And I started to remember Jesus and Mary. And then in that instant, I felt God the Father. I felt his love, and I felt that God was looking down upon me through the clouds. And at that very moment, I looked at the sky and I said, I don't know you, but I do know that you exist. I don't have anything. I don't have drugs. I don't have my boyfriend. I don't have my family. And I've destroyed my life. But I want to thank you because you gave me the most beautiful childhood. And you gave me so many beautiful opportunities. And I destroyed my life. And I want to ask for your forgiveness for everything that I've done. For some reason, I felt so much peace inside of me that I couldn't explain. And I put myself in a fetal position and I held my legs and I started to cry and cry. And all of a sudden I felt a hug. I felt somebody hug me with so much love. And when I opened my eyes, in front of me was this girl. And I saw her name tag. Her name is Bonnie. She had blonde hair and these beautiful blue eyes full of mercy. And her eyes pierced my eyes and she said, Jesus loves you. Jesus loves you. I'm a waitress at that restaurant in the corner, and I saw you crying on the street, and I started to pray for you. And God told me to tell you that even if your mother or your father shall forsake you, that he will never abandon nor forsake you, that he will be with you until the end of time, and that everything that you've done in your life, he forgives you. But at that moment, when she looked at me, I knew it was not Bonnie. I knew it was Jesus himself that came down from heaven. I knew it was Jesus himself that went inside of her heart and gave her the courage to come out and hug me and to tell me that I was forgiven. And it was Jesus himself that held me off the street and lifted me up with such dignity, just like he did in all the Gospels he did with women. And I know it was our Lord. And there's a song in Spanish. There's a beautiful song. I don't know if it's in English. But the song is that when the good shepherd loses one sheep, he leaves the 99 sheep, and he goes out into the darkness, into the misery, to find that lost sheep. And that's how Jesus is. No matter where we are or what we've done, when we repent with our heart, the good shepherd comes for us out in the misery and takes us back to his flock. My sheep know my voice, and they follow me. And that young girl said, I'm going to take you home. I don't care if I have to drive 10 hours. I'm going to take you home. And I knew that my mom had moved back from Mexico, and she was living in Sacramento. And I knew where she lived, and she took me home. And I never saw Bonnie again. And the reason I mention her name is because I hope one day that she hears my story, that she'll remember and recognize it. But if not, I will give her thanks in heaven, and she will see all the fruits that that act of love did. And she'll see all the babies that were saved because of that act of love that she did. And when I came home, my mom said, praise God that you're home. I've been praying for you for 3 years on my knees in front of the Blessed Sacrament. I don't belong to the New Age movement anymore. I came home back to the Catholic Church. And I've been praying the rosary every day. And I've been offering every single Mass and Eucharist for God to give me this great miracle. And she said, welcome home. And I thank God for his divine mercy. But I thank my mother, because if it weren't for my mother's prayers, I wouldn't be alive. And every mother that's here, if you have a son or a daughter that's away from the church, that is on drugs, that has an addiction, that's in jail, never lose hope. Because the prayers of a mother are so powerful and they're so special to God. That's why God elevated his mother, the Virgin Mary, on high. Because God loves and keeps the prayers of a mother in his heart, and he answers all of the mother's prayers. Don't ever give up. Don't ever stop praying the rosary. Keep going. God will do the miracle in your son or daughter's life like he did in mine. And my mom held up the Bible and she said, do you know why Satan took you and dragged you around the world? Because you didn't know who you were. I never told you as a mother what your identity was, because many youth don't know their identity. That's why they're in drugs, pornography. That's why they have homosexuality's tendencies, because they don't know their identity. You are not worthy because of the friends, because of the education and the career and the job you had.
The only reason that you're worthy is because Jesus Christ shed the last drop of blood for you on the cross. You want to know what your identity is, Patricia? The blood of Christ is your identity. And you're the daughter of the Most High. And you're the princess of the King of Kings. And this Bible is what God thinks of you. I don't care if the world says you're a drug addict, if you're a loser, if you're a nobody, if you're trash. I care what God says about you, and you got to know what he thinks about you. And she started reading me Psalms and Bible, and that gave me so much worth. But it was the sacraments. It was confession. It was the Mass that liberated me. Thank God for the Catholic Church and our sacraments. They are a treasure. They are healing. It healed me from so much. But I couldn't forgive myself because of the abortions. I knew God forgave me. I think most women that go to confession, they can't forgive themselves, but they know God forgives them. But I couldn't forgive myself because I worked inside a Planned Parenthood. I know what happens to the unborn. And you know what's the saddest part about it? Why the unborn are in pieces and trash? Because we have a sexual disorder in our society. Because kids don't know what true love is. They don't know what purity is. They don't know what chastity is. And who pays the price? These unborn. It's not fair. And I told my mom, I know where my kids are. They're in a dumpster. And my mom said, go to Rachel's Vineyard, a post-abortion healing retreat. And I walked in on a Friday afternoon feeling shameful and feeling like a murderer. On Saturday evening, during a prayer, with my eyes shut, I saw my 3 children. A little girl, a boy, and a little girl. And when I saw these children, my children, they were screaming, "Mother, mother." I never thought of myself as a mother. I was an assassin. Mother, we love you. We're praying for you. And they would tell them each other, look how beautiful she is. We love her. She's seeing us. And the girls had dresses, and they had bows in their hair. And I heard Jesus' voice tell me, do you see the bows in your daughter's hairs? The Virgin Mary, she put those bows in their hair. Do you see the dresses that they're wearing? The Virgin Mary put those dresses. Do you see your son? The way he's dressed, it's as if I would have dressed him that way if he would have lived. He said, your children live because I was victorious over death on the cross. And the day you come to heaven, you will see your children. And the Virgin Mary is taking care of them under her mantle. For every woman that's lost a child, abortion or miscarriage, nothing is lost. A lot of women say, I've lost a kid in a miscarriage. Nothing is lost. You will see your children in heaven for an eternity. Nothing's lost. And that day I gave him a name. Mariana, in honor of the Virgin Mary, Emmanuel, and Rosie. And I made them a promise. I said, I didn't give them a chance to live. And I was forgiven for so much. I was so happy that I felt like I was a mom. And you know what the thing that women need to know when they've had an abortion, why they can't forgive themselves? Because they need to know that their children forgive them. When I saw that they forgave me, it was like the click that I needed to heal. I needed to know that they forgave me. And I made them a promise that no matter how heavy, no matter what would happen to me or the persecution, I would defend life. And as hard as it is to grab a microphone and to tell this story, there's millions of women that have this story. There's millions of people that can't tell the story and that are suffering in silence. And this is why I do this. And I just want to encourage everybody here to not forget the unborn. We're called to defend life. We're Catholic. We're the children of the Virgin Mary. And I love this because the first child that I held in my arms that was saved through my story by the grace of God, that baby smiled back at me. He was 3 months. And I thought, my goodness, this baby could be a father. He can have children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. When you invest in the pro-life movement, we love deals that are 2 for 1. But what about 1 for a million? What about when one life is saved, a whole generation saved, millions of lives are saved for one baby? What if that baby's a priest? What if he becomes a priest and just helps so many people go to heaven? And I know, this is what I love about the pro-life movement. I don't expect to see fruits or to receive here on earth. I don't expect to see, because a lot of us get discouraged. We think, okay, we're not doing anything. We're just praying. Nothing's happening. I'm not saving. Nothing's happening. We do it out of love. Love is what motivates us without seeing fruits. But I know for a fact that the day I die and I go to heaven, those babies that have been saved, they're going to have a whole generation. My fruits are still going to live on this earth. My fruits will always live. And I just want to thank all of you guys that are in the pro-life movement, that are in the movement to heal families and marriages, I want to thank you for all your work. There's very few of us in the world that have the courage to do it. And just to end this talk, I just want to give you guys words that my spiritual director told me. I was very discouraged one day, and I wanted to give up because Satan knows that if one life is saved, millions of lives are saved. That's why abortion is so important to Satan. And I was discouraged. And my spiritual director said, Patricia, can I just give you a beautiful enlightenment when you die, the day of your judgment? I said, what, Father? He said, Jesus, when you die and you're facing God and you're facing your judgment, Jesus comes in and says, hey, I'm her lawyer. I paid for her on the cross. I paid her price. But people that are in the pro-life movement have a beautiful judgment day. Because not only is Jesus your lawyer that comes and says, hey, I paid the price for this person's sins on the cross, but you're going to hear the voices in heaven of millions of unborn babies crying out to God, Father, Father, have mercy on this soul because this soul loved us on earth. You will have millions of lawyers on your judgment day. God bless everybody. Thank you so much. And I just want everybody to give God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and the Virgin Mary an applause. And all the glory goes to them. Thank you.